Moving on, we're going to be going to our Redzone Rodeo go-around, and we're going to be starting to break down some topics. So, Rob, first of all, to start us out, should the Eagles trade Reddick and Josh Sweat and want to sign Bryce Huff? Should they? Do you think that's a reasonable or absurd take?
I think that's a reasonable take. I think that's a buckle winner right there. I think Hassan Reddick and Josh Sweat really did not provide a lot of pass rush for the Eagles down the stretch last year. I think signing Bryce Huff, who is one of the best pass rushers in the league, would be a huge boon to that defense. Um, I know recently it was reported that the Eagles are trying to shop both Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick, and they want to sign Bryce Huff in free agency. I think that would be a brilliant move to kind of retool that defense and gain some draft capital for players who weren't producing at necessarily the highest level last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think that this is a buckle winner take, a reasonable take, just because the Eagles, they have a lot of figuring out to do. And whether it's talking about offensive or defense side of the ball, they need to start figuring out, first of all, what happened last season with their fall off. Are these players going to be able to help them not rebuild, but help them kind of overcome that process leading into next season? Or, if not, do you want to go out and get someone who will make a difference on your team? And I think that that's really a question that the Eagles are thinking about and definitely should pull the trigger on, because you want to come out in the 2024 season and you want to come out go all cylinders. You don't want to have people thinking, oh, well, it continues, the losing streak, the falling apart that we all saw the Philadelphia Eagles. You want to come out and you want to make a difference. And sometimes, shifting up the roster a little bit, getting rid of guys who may have were average or underperformed, and signing big weapons, big names, guys who are going to make a difference day one, starting this 2024 season. And so absolutely, I think this is a buckle winner take.
Yeah, I mean, Bryce Huff is a name that a lot of fans don't necessarily know because he was a rotational player for the Jets last year. But he had one of the highest pass rush win rates in the entire league, and he's done that consistently now for several years. He's been at the top of the charts in that. He's a really bad run defender, though, which is why he was a rotational player for the Jets. But I can tell you, as a Cowboys fan, my worst nightmare is that the Eagles trade Reddick and Josh Sweat for like a bunch of draft capital, sign Bryce Huff, and then have Nolan Smith on the other end of Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. That would be horrific to me. I hope they don't do that, but I think they will end up doing that because I think that'd be really smart for them to do. Carson, staying in the NFC East, there have been a lot of rumors floating around that the Giants are done with Daniel Jones and that they're really interested in JJ McCarthy. Jason La Canfora reported that the Giants might even be interested in trading up to draft JJ McCarthy. So I'm going to tell you this. I think JJ McCarthy is a great quarterback, and I believe the Giants should draft JJ McCarthy in the first round.
So I think that this take is absurd. This is a bucked off take. And the reason why I'm thinking this way is that I do not think that the Giants are going to be drafting JJ McCarthy super high in the first round. They're already sitting at number 6, and there's been some rumors that they could even likely trade up to 4 with the Arizona Cardinals to take this guy. I honestly think this is a bunch of hogwash. And the reason why is I understand the concerns at quarterback that the Giants have, but you're dealing with a guy who you're paying a bunch of money, Daniel Jones, already. And even if he is going to be not your starter, in terms of the longevity of the season, who knows how many games he's going to start. You kind of have to start him. You're already paying the money. You kind of have to be like, you know what, we gotta see if this guy can do it. And of course, last season he was hurt. The offensive line struggles for the Giants, just offensive, other than really Saquon Barkley, and later in the season, Jalen Hyatt with their rookie wide receiver. There was no offensive production going on, and a lot of that came down to their offensive line. And so I think for the Giants, going up and drafting JJ McCarthy very high, it could be an easy fix to the quarterback position, but I think you're going to be bringing in a young guy like JJ McCarthy into the same situation that Daniel Jones failed in. And then you have to ask yourself the question, is Daniel Jones a worse quarterback? Or I'm sorry, is JJ McCarthy a better quarterback than Daniel Jones? Or are they both being flung into situations where they have no protection? They have no, they're running for their lives most of the time, setting them up for injury. And as a Titans fan, I kind of know this struggle. And especially with the Titans drafting Will Levis last year, we're getting this young kid in the building. He seems like he has the ability to go out and do some great things, potentially being the franchise quarterback for the team. But last season we couldn't protect him. Our offensive line was so bad, and he was as a rookie, not even playing a whole season. He went down with a couple injuries, and I think that's something that the Giants are taking into consideration. And I really do believe that with their first round pick, I don't think they're going to be trading up. I think they're going to be taking one of the top offensive tackles to kind of start to stabilize that process, for the defense, for that team to protect their quarterback, whoever that might be. Now, could I see them picking JJ McCarthy up later? That's a possibility I could see, but I do think JJ McCarthy is going to be off the board later, round one. So I think the Giants are going to miss their opportunity to draft him, even if they are high on them. But I do think that this is a bucked off take. This is an absurd take, because of the fact that I think they are more focused on offensive line and trying to rebuild that way.
Okay, so a couple things here. First, I think, do you agree that the Giants need to move on from Daniel Jones, or do you think they should give him another chance this year?
I think that they should move on, but I think they are going to give him another chance this year because of how much money that they're paying him. It's kind of foolish to have him sit on the bench and giving him all those resources without putting him out on the field for at least the first couple season games. But if he doesn't perform, I think he will be done.
See, I think the Giants have already moved on from him because I think
Really?
I know you said about the whole supporting cast was really bad last year and everything, but they put out Teddy Bridgewater and they put out Tommy DeVito, and they both performed better than Daniel Jones
That's
with the
true.
same
Yeah.
supporting cast, or even a worse supporting cast because there were
Yeah.
more injuries to the team as the year went on. If you're being outperformed by Tommy DeVito and Teddy Bridgewater, not Teddy Bridgewater, was it Teddy? No, it was Tyrod Taylor.
Tyrod Taylor. Yeah.
Okay. If you're being outperformed by Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito, I feel like that's kind of a sign that you're not the quarterback of the future. You're not the guy that the team wants to build around. And because of that, I think the Giants have already made the decision to move on from Daniel Jones. And the question now is just how. I
Yeah.
think most years I would not have JJ McCarthy as a guy that's worthy of being taken in the top 10. But if you're the Giants and JJ McCarthy is the quarterback that you like in this draft class, and you think you can take him and make him your franchise quarterback, I feel like you don't really have a choice. You have to take him at number 6, or maybe even trade up to get him at number 4. Because Carson, it's like you said, he's not going to make it out of the first round. There's just too many teams this year that need a quarterback. We'll see what happens in free agency with Kirk, and we'll see if the Bears trade Justin Fields. But there are a lot of teams out there that need a quarterback, and I think at least 5 are going to go in the first round this year. So if the Giants believe JJ McCarthy is their guy, if they think he's the one, they're going to have to take him in the first round. Maybe that'll involve like a small trade back. Maybe that'll be the route they go. But I don't think it's bucked off take at all to say that JJ McCarthy could be the Giants' first round pick this year.
I would continue to push back against that, just because I think for the Giants, yes, they kind of do need the quarterback, but I think that there is some other cheaper uh veteran players that are out there, especially in regards to Russell Wilson. I think that, with Russell Wilson, most of his contract being paid still by the Broncos, there's a possibility the Giants could pick him up for relatively cheap, and they could throw him in there. and he can be kind of the mediator of like, okay, well, if Daniel Jones doesn't work out these first couple games, or even if they've moved on completely from him, they can throw that guy in there for for the season, maybe a 2-year deal. I don't know what they're gonna necessarily look like doing, but even getting Russell Wilson in the building to potentially start to rebuild the team, because the Giants have so many holes and quarterback's just one of them. But I don't know if the Giants should give up so much revenue to trade up 2 spaces to take JJ McCarthy. And the other thing I also wanted to say too, in regards to this, is I think that some of these other later first round picks, as I would kind of put them, in such like Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., and JJ McCarthy, I think there's a lot of hype with them recently based on what they were able to do in the combine. But I think that right now it's being overhyped. And I think these 3 guys, even though people are projecting them to be taken early in the first round, I don't think that that's going to be really reasonable. I do think they'll be later in the first round, as Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. I think those are going to be the top 3 guys. So having JJ McCarthy be this like number 4 quarterback for the Giants, to like, whether they're taking him at 6 or trading up for 4, I think for the Giants, I think you're already hurting in a stuck situation with Daniel Jones. That why give up more assets to potentially move up 2 spots, or potentially draft a rookie guy, when you're just bringing him right back into a situation that, is he going to be better than Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor, or Tommy DeVito? There's a likelihood, but I think those challenges are still going to exist. And, I think there's also cheaper alternatives out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree that drafting JJ McCarthy at that spot isn't what I would do in that situation. Like, I don't think it's smart. I don't think JJ McCarthy is the 4th best quarterback in this draft class. If anything, I think that's what's bucked off, is having JJ
Yeah.
McCarthy as your 4th best quarterback. In my opinion, it's clearly Michael Penix Jr. But if the Giants are that sold on him, they are professional like football player evaluators, and I'm not, obviously. So
Yeah.
who's to say my take is better than theirs? If they're that sold on JJ McCarthy, then I think you have to take him in the first round. If you're that sold on him and you're that done with Daniel Jones, like a lot of these reports are suggesting. But if I were the Giants, I think what I would do is I would sign Russell Wilson or someone like that to like a 1 or 2 year deal, and I would draft a wide receiver with that first pick, Romo Dunze or Malik
Okay.
Neighbors, because I know the Giants for years now have been trying to find a wide receiver one. Even ever since Odell left, they have not had like that wide receiver one like guy that you just know you have to cover. And I think the Giants are desperately wanting to find someone like that. And Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors, if either of them are available at that pick, would be the answer to that problem that they've had for so long. So if I'm the Giants, if JJ McCarthy isn't the guy, I think I would be taking Rome Odunze or Malik Neighbors at that spot.
Yeah, no, I mean that's certainly fair. That's always, I think, the question, and it's a big question that even, as a Titans fan, the Titans community is kind of arguing about. Do we go tackle at 7 or wide receiver at 7, or best off the board? And I think that, you start to enter this dilemma with, if your offensive line is shaky and it doesn't do a great job of protecting whoever it is that's going to be your quarterback, it's difficult not saying it's a waste of a pick, but if you bring in a wide receiver, who knows if that wide receiver is going to be able to make the difference if there's continuous defensive players in that quarterback's face, forcing him to run out of the pocket, forcing him to make quick, more fast decisions that, may not be, oh, that's the guy I'm trying to get to in this route. That's what I'm trying to get to. Kind of shaking things up a little bit. Or do you go the tackle? Do you build that line? Do you deal with kind of mediocrity in terms of the wide receiver room? And so that's a constant struggle. And I'm still split. Because as much as it would be great to have the Titans bring in an offensive alignment and really refix this offensive line, I would love to see Brock Bowers, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze in the building as an offensive weapon for Will Levis. So absolutely, I do agree with you in terms of like, do you go wide receiver? Do you go offensive lineman? Or, do you feel like JJ McCarthy is your guy? I think that's a bucked off take that they should draft JJ McCarthy. I think there's better options for them for the long term in this rebuild because the Giants aren't going to be, picking up a guy and winning tomorrow. So I think for the longevity, drafting JJ McCarthy might not benefit you as well as drafting that offensive tackle or the wide receiver, as you said.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I don't think they should draft JJ McCarthy because I'm not sold on JJ McCarthy. I don't think you're sold on JJ McCarthy. I don't think most people are really. Um, but if they really believe he's the next franchise guy, if he's the next Eli Manning, I can understand why they would make that selection, even though I would
Absolutely.
personally disagree with it very strongly.
Yeah. So moving things off of the Daniel Jones, JJ McCarthy, rumor mill, uh, we're going to be talking about this kind of thought that has been going around the NFL that they are considering implementing an 18-game season, so extending the season one more game. Rob, what do you think of this and this take? Should the NFL implement an 18-game season?
Yeah, Carson, I think that's a total buckle winner right there. I mean, it seems like it's pretty likely to happen. Like a lot of the NFL officials were mentioning that it seems like this idea is going to move forward. And the way it's going to work is not only will they add another game, they're going to add another bye week. So the season will go from being 18 weeks long to 20 weeks long. I love football, so the longer football season is, the better, in my opinion. And a lot of the
Absolutely.
players and the Players Association love this too because adding an extra game, you think they might be opposed to that, but that extra bye week is huge for them. It'll give the players multiple chances to recover and have like a week off during the season. So it's kind of like a win-win for the players because they get an extra week off, and it's a win for the fans and the league because there's more football to watch, more games that happen, and obviously that'll make the NFL more money because there's more games to broadcast. I just think it's an all-around win-win-win. Like there's really no loser here, and I just think this is like the ultimate buckle winner idea. And I really hope they finalize this decision before the season starts this year, so we can have 20 weeks of regular season football this year.
Absolutely. I agree. I think this is a buckle winner take right here too, that the NFL should implement an 18-game season. With the longevity of it, it looks like that the Super Bowl weekend would be even on President's weekend. So with that being the case, a lot of people, I know not everywhere gets President's Day off, but that could be something that's super big because the Super Bowl would be on pretty much a 3-day weekend for a lot of people. And with that being the case, you have more time to like really just, have a good time, have a party, just, it would be super fabulous for them to have and incorporate that into kind of the NFL season. And then of course ending with the playoffs and the Super Bowl. It just kind of lines up perfectly. And I agree. More football, the better. And I absolutely love the idea of 2 bye weeks, giving the players rest and also time to get over some injuries. I know that was the biggest concern with this is like, okay, if we're elongating the season, what does this mean in terms of player health and player longevity? And I think that's a fair question. I think that's something that's definitely at the heart of deciding whether or not to go for this or continue with the same process. But I do feel like adding those extra bye weeks in, of course, you can't completely avoid injury. Like that's the unfortunate nature of the sport. I think this is a win-win-win-win for everybody, as you said, Rob. So absolutely, I think this is a buckle winner take. I really hope the NFL implements this, and I think it would be great for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely my favorite thing that the NFL has proposed this offseason. I really hope it gets done. Shifting gears here, Carson.
Okay.
Uh, One of the biggest free agents this year is Saquon Barkley, the running back for the New York Giants, who's likely not returning to them.
Mm.
Rumors have been saying that, the three teams that are the biggest contenders for him are the Bears, the Chargers, and the Ravens. I think the Ravens are the best landing spot for Saquon Barkley. What are your thoughts?
I think that's a buckle winner take. I think that's very reasonable. I think out of the three that you mentioned with the Bears, Chargers, and the Ravens, I think that the Ravens have the best. Not that it's all about supporting cast, but they have the best weapons on their offense to really give Saquon the best ability to shine in a league where, or on a team where in the past with the Giants, he's been kind of the only thing. And how many times have defenses, really shut him down because of the fact that they are like, well, the Giants don't have like a passing game, so we can have a couple guys watching what Barkley does. And so I think that within being on a team like the Ravens, obviously, the Chargers and the Bears would be good spots, but I think the Ravens would be the best. You have a dynamic quarterback, a dual threat quarterback in Lamar Jackson. So you're already trying to shut down his run lane, his pass lane. Now you're adding Saquon Barkley to the mix. Oh my goodness, what is the defense going to do? And you have, the wide receiver room is great. Mark Andrews at tight end. You have just so many weapons. And I feel like the Ravens could turn into the 49ers of last season offensively, but even better because of the fact that they have Lamar Jackson, who has proved his ability in the season. I will like to put out in the season, struggle in the playoffs a little bit, but in the season, I would even say more than Brock Purdy, where he's had to overcome some teams around him that maybe weren't the best, but we've seen him thrive. And so bringing Saquon Barkley in onto the Ravens would be a win-win for not only Barkley, but also the Ravens. You're bringing in a dynamic weapon at running back, someone that would be better than anyone you've had on your roster for a little bit now. And also, this would be a great opportunity for Barkley to basically prove that he is a top running back in this league. And be able to kind of show that on a broad scale, have the ability to go make a Super Bowl run with this team, whereas the Giants would not, or do not really have the ability to do so this season. Anything can happen, of course, with that being said. But yeah, absolutely. I think the Ravens are the best landing spot for Saquon. And yeah, what do you think, Rob? Do you think this is a buckle winner or a bucked off take?
I think this is a buckle winner, but ultimately, I think the decision he makes is going to come down to what he values the most. If it's money,
Absolutely.
then he's not going to the Baltimore Ravens. He's going to the
Yep.
Chicago Bears, in my opinion, because they have a ton of cap space. They could definitely give him a big contract that he probably wants. But if it's
Mhm.
winning, he is getting up there in terms of age for a running back, especially. I feel like the Ravens are the buckle winner. That's the team that's going to give you a chance to compete right away. They have a great roster. They have a loaded defense. They have they have a really brilliant young wide receiver in Zay Flowers. They have a good offensive line. They have two great young tight ends. They have obviously a superstar MVP quarterback in Lamar Jackson. I mean, if you want to go somewhere where you're going to be able to go win a Super Bowl and put your name in the record books, I really don't know if there's a better team in the entire NFL for Saquon to go to than the Baltimore Ravens. And the fact that they have a lot of interest in him, I think that's amazing for Saquon. And if I was him, I would certainly go to the Baltimore Ravens. I think that would be so much fun to see a running back with that sort of talent next to Lamar Jackson in the same backfield. It'd be really scary for any opposing defense to try and game plan for him, and it would just add another dimension to that offense that they have. Um, but like I said, it'll depend. What does he want? Does he want money or does he want a chance to win the Super Bowl? Um, you know, and maybe the Bears, if they go draft Caleb Williams, maybe that makes Saquon Barkley think they're a Super Bowl contender now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I could see any of these teams being contenders. Getting the chance to go play with Justin Herbert and the Chargers. Uh, you know, any one of these teams, I feel like could make the case that they're Super Bowl contenders this coming season, especially if the Bears draft Caleb. But if you want the best chance, it's by far the Baltimore Ravens. So
Yeah.
absolutely, this is the winner.
Yeah. Not to continuously say what I've been saying, but I do think is we've been talking that the Ravens are the best match. And especially if Barkley wants to pursue, uh, you know, the distinction of winning a Super Bowl, I think is really big in the minds of players. And of course, I know that money is a big factor as well. But for the Ravens and Saquon Barkley to be able to come jointly together and be like, the Ravens win because you bring in a dynamic running back. Saquon wins because this gives you the best shot, especially on paper, if you're looking at it. Because, of course, with the Chargers, with Jim Harbaugh being hired, obviously great coach in college, has some NFL experience, we still need to see what he's able to do in the NFL. You know, it may be great things, as people are saying. There may be some times where there may be some mess ups, some mistakes, some just blown calls and blown whatever, you know. And so, yeah, the Chargers have a great opportunity, but there still is some question marks in regards to, you know, that team. And of course, you nailed it on the head with Chicago. You know, if they're bringing in, you know, a rookie quarterback, um, obviously Caleb Williams is everyone he's what's hyped up to be. There's still that question mark. What will he do in the season? How will he translate to the NFL? Um, which, you know, from this point, it seems like he will be doing great things in the NFL just based on how high everyone is viewing him. But still, there's question marks. You know, is there going to be a growing curve? You know, you're walking in, you may have the most money with Chicago, but you know, you may miss out on your time window for winning a Super Bowl. And I think that's really a big question for a lot of these players. And I know, especially as a Titans fan, with everything regarding Derrick Henry and free agency, you know, having a dynamic running back on the Ravens is almost unfair to NFL defenses. And so bringing in someone like Saquon Barkley all automatically ups the stock in terms of the Ravens being potentially Super Bowl favorites, in terms of the roster itself. The Bears, I don't know if you would get that. I think obviously it would change a couple things. I think they would be highly ranked, but in terms of, you know, winning that ultimate goal, which is any fan, any player, any coach, they want to see their team win the Super Bowl. That's the ultimate goal. And so if that's the direction you want to trend in, I think, you know, the Ravens being the best landing spot for Saquon Barkley, that's a buckle winner right there.
Yeah, totally agree. That's absolutely a buckle winner.
All right, Rob, what do you think about this? Russell Wilson will win a playoff game as a Pittsburgh Steeler.
I think that's a buckle winner. I think the Steelers are by far the most likely team to land Russell Wilson as their new quarterback. He spent hours there with them. The other day when he was visiting the Giants and then the Steelers, he spent by far the most time with the Steelers. So I think it's very likely that that's where he ends up. I think the Steelers, we talked about this last week. The Steelers have a great roster. They
Yep.
have good wide receivers, good tight ends. Their offensive line is coming together. They have great running backs. Their defense is phenomenal. They add a quarterback that can really throw the ball well into that mix. I think they're instantly a playoff contender, and I think they're certainly capable of winning a playoff game. So, for my money right now, I would bet that Russell Wilson will win a playoff game as a Pittsburgh Steeler this season. That's a buckle winner.
Yeah, I agree. I think honestly, the two teams I have in mind with Russell Wilson is the Steelers and the Giants. And I know we briefly mentioned, you know, potentially the Giants bringing him in, being really cheap. But in terms of, you know, Russell Wilson, where does he want to play potentially with the best ability to resurrect his career? Because, you know, right now there's rumors going around that the Russell Wilson deal is the worst trade in NFL history. I don't agree with that. Maybe we can, you know, debate that on another Redzone Rodeo go around. But I think that his time in Denver was certainly nothing compared to what he was able to accomplish in Seattle. And so I think he's looking for the ability to revitalize his career, to show that, hey, you know what? I am still a great quarterback that has a shot at potentially the Hall of Fame, depending on what he does with these next couple seasons that nearing the end of his career. Right now, if he's going the trajectory with the Broncos and how not so great he was doing, you know, you might miss it. So I think for again, both sides, not only the Pittsburgh Steelers bringing in a veteran quarterback to kind of maybe help Kenny Pickett in a way, because I really do think that the Steelers are just so locked in on Kenny Pickett. It's almost like it's they're blinded by this kind of notion of like Kenny Pickett, he's a Pittsburgh guy. He has to work. Um, Bringing in a veteran guy could help kind of, you know, undo maybe some of those mistakes, maybe help him shape into a better quarterback. You never know. But I think starting the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers with Kenny Pickett as your guy and Mason Rudolph, that's not going to guarantee you a lot of success. And bringing in a veteran like Russell Wilson, with the roster around him already that's already been built, it's a win-win. And so I agree. I think this is a buckle winner take. I think Russell Wilson will win a playoff game as a Pittsburgh Steeler, and he will break the slump of Steelers making the playoffs barely, but not making it further.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a really good point. I didn't even think about the impact that Russell Wilson would have on Kenny Pickett. You're right. He might absolutely help revive Kenny Pickett's career, get him set on the right track, the way the Jets were hoping Aaron Rodgers would help Zach Wilson, before his injury.
Yeah.
Um, I will say I saw a report, I think it was from Jeremy Fowler over at ESPN, that said not Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders are also a serious contender for Russell Wilson, which makes sense because they're picking a little later in the draft, and obviously they need a quarterback right now because Jimmy Garoppolo did not work out.
Mm-mm.
So that's another team I would keep my eye on, but for my money, he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler for sure. I think that will be absolutely phenomenal for them. Going to another big free agent quarterback, seems like Kirk Cousins will be going to one of two teams right now. A lot of the rumors say he's either going to go back to the Vikings or he will be going to the Atlanta Falcons. It seems like those are the two teams that are really competing for his services, and there's about a 50-50 chance, according to a lot of these like NFL insiders, about where Kirk Cousins is going to end up. But I think that Kirk Cousins is going to want a fresh start with a young roster and a new coach. So I believe Kirk Cousins will be an Atlanta Falcon, Carson.
I think that's a buckle winner take. I think that's very reasonable. I know, of course, with the Vikings and the Falcons, it seems like, as the two major teams kind of battling over to retain Kirk Cousins or bring him into the building. I really think Kirk Cousins will be an Atlanta Falcon. I think that, the Vikings are at a stage where within the division, they kind of have their backs up against the wall. Everybody else in their division, the Green Bay Packers have Jordan Love. They seem to be trending upwards. Chicago Bears are most likely going to be drafting this franchise talent level college, guy in Caleb Williams. Already have a great supporting cast, maybe not great, a good supporting cast. They're going to be probably upgrading this season. They're on the rise with the Packers. The Lions, don't need an explanation. They've proven they're on the rise. Dan Campbell's crew is wrecking it right now. And really looking forward to see what they do next season. But the Vikings are kind of like, what are they doing? Like what's going on? Like, other than really Justin Jefferson and a couple of other players, they've kind of fallen behind. And if they're ever going to be taking the NFC North back and winning that division and being able to go further, I really think for the Vikings, you have to look at yourself and be like, okay, is Kirk Cousins the guy? And I think they've tried that the last couple seasons, but I think the writing's on the wall now. You're seeing your divisional opponents get better in every single way where you're not. And I think that the Vikings are kind of hitting this realization that we have great players, but we don't have enough of them to build a winning roster. And that being the case, how can we start to rebuild? Not maybe a full tear down rebuild process, but how can we build ourselves back up to compete with Jordan Love and the Packers, to compete with potential Caleb Williams and the Bears, to compete with, the Lions, Dan Campbell's crew. So that's, I think, something that they're going to be really looking for in the draft as a quarterback. I would not be surprised if they trade up to potentially 4 and they give away a lot of assets to get their quarterback of the future. And maybe again, and on the same kind of like page, trading Kirk Cousins away, or not trading, but letting Kirk Cousins leave and go to the Atlanta Falcons. And I think, it works both ways, kind of as we've been talking, for the Vikings, I think they kind of are realizing we need to start to rebuild some positions. We need to start to look towards the future. How we're going to compete. We need to bring youth. Kirk Cousins has been a guy in the league for a long time now. Great player, obviously competent quarterback, competent veteran quarterback, top veteran quarterback right now in free agency, but I think the Falcons, if if they can't bring in Justin Fields, as that's also been a big rumor, then I think Kirk Cousins is the next best guy. And if Kirk Cousins comes to the Falcons, the difference really, and I guess I should say the positive side for Kirk Cousins coming to the Falcons is that they play in a super weak division. And we obviously at this point we don't know if Baker Mayfield's returning to the Buccaneers. We know Mike Evans has been, re-signed. But in really looking, the Panthers aren't going to be making a splash this year. And you have the Saints that are kind of dealing with their own issues with Derek Carr and some of their other issues that they've had this past season. So Kirk Cousins walking into the Atlanta Falcons room automatically makes them contenders for the division. And not only does that happen, but Kirk Cousins gets another shot at a potential playoff run, maybe even Super Bowl if the Falcons play their cards right. So for Kirk Cousins, who hasn't won the Super Bowl, again, this is a player who's reaching the end of his career. Maybe not next season, maybe not whatever, but still, he's definitely thinking, okay, I haven't won a Super Bowl yet. Where can I go with my talent level and my age and that can give me the best opportunity to winning that game, the game that everyone wants to have on their resume before they retire. So I think this is again a win-win situation. This is a buckle winner take. Kirk Cousins to the Atlanta Falcons. Both sides win on that, and it really gives Kirk Cousins options to, show off his talents and really chase another ring, or chase a ring, not another.
Yeah, I mean, think about what the Atlanta Falcons already have in place. They already have Drake London, who's really good, wide receiver two slash bottom end wide receiver one. They have Kyle Pitts, who, although he's never really produced in an NFL season, he has all the talent in the world, and he just needs, a quarterback and a coach that will actually get him targets. They got Bijan Robinson, who is an insanely talented running back. That will probably lead the league in rushing multiple times before his career is over. They have a solidifying defense. Their offensive line, it's not perfect, but it'll get the job done. If they go out and add a really good franchise quarterback without having to use any draft capital on one, I think that's huge. Because then you could use your draft capital, which is pretty good this year since they weren't so great, to fill some of those remaining holes. They can go out and get like a legitimate wide receiver one to go pair with Drake London. If they do that, I think they should be favorites to win the NFC South and go deep into the playoffs. Kirk Cousins, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and another wide receiver from the draft this year. I think that would be a nearly unstoppable, super talented offense, and it would be so much fun to watch. But it'd be very scary as a fan of a team that's also in the NFC. I think that's a team that could definitely contend for the Super Bowl, and I really hope the Falcons manage to put it together because, like I said, that would be so much fun to watch happen.
Yeah, and after years of just mediocrity, and honestly, like having that kind of like chip on your shoulder that you were up by so many points against the Patriots in that Super Bowl and you blew it, it's like the 1 yard thing with the Titans. They were 1 yard short to winning their Super Bowl. And how many times have, Titans fans heard like, oh, 1 yard short, you were 1 yard, in Falcons fans must just be livid with how many times they have to hear, well, Tom Brady in a short time basically racked up 20 plus points to win the Super Bowl. It must be tough. And so for the Falcons fan base too, I think this is a win for them because they would then be able to have the hope of rewriting some of those wrongs. Of course, they could never really get over that because it happened. Got to live with it. But you could follow that up with, well, yeah, but we went back and we won it. So, kind of messing with that. So absolutely. So that's a buckle winner take. If I haven't seen one. All right, Rob. This one's gonna hit closer and nearer and dearer to your heart. The Cowboys should trade Dak Prescott.
Oh man, Carson. Okay. So a lot of rumors have been flying around that the Cowboys' plan this year is to let Dak Prescott play out the contract that he has right now, not extend him. And then if he wins the Super Bowl this year, or he at least gets the team to the Super Bowl, then the Cowboys will give him like a huge contract extension. But anything short of that, and they're going to let him walk. Obviously, that's not guaranteed, but that's just what a lot of like NFL insiders are saying right now. A lot of those NFL reporters are saying it. Man, Carson, I think this is a buckle winner take. If
Okay.
the Cowboys' plan is that, I would much rather trade Dak Prescott right now for several first round picks and then use those picks to either go out and get another younger, cheaper quarterback or to build around Trey Lance if that's what Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy think is smartest. I don't think I want Dak to play for us one more year and then just let him walk in free agency and then get nothing in return for him. I feel like that's probably the worst way you could handle this situation. Um, I know his contract might make it really difficult to trade him right now because he's owed like 50, $60 million just this year. And he counts that against the cap. So I don't actually know if it would be possible to trade him right now in terms of contract stuff. And he also has a no trade clause in his contract. So any trade is something he would have to approve. So it is near impossible, I would say, to actually successfully trade him to another team. Um, but that being said, they could certainly find a way to do it if they really wanted to. And I think it's something they should at least consider if their plan really is to let Dak Prescott walk after this season. If they really do want to keep Dak Prescott, though, which is what I would prefer happen, then obviously I would say just get an extension done with him now. Don't play this stupid game where you let him play out the season on his 50, $60 million contract hit or whatever it is, and then let him walk after this year. Hopefully that's what they end up doing. They extend him. But right now, with all the information that's coming out, I would say trading him or at least looking into the possibility of trading him and seeing if that's something you could realistically make work is a buckle winner of an idea.
Yeah. Interesting. I did not think you were going to go with that. I thought you were going to be like, "That's absurd. That's a bucked off take. We're not. Nope. We're all in on Dak Prescott." But I completely understand where you're coming from, and I agree. I agree. I think that you know, watching Derrick Henry do that um, is really hurting because the Titans aren't going to be able to get anything for him. And so, as much as it was awesome to see him play last season and do some Derrick Henry cool things, there's really that question that you brought up is, do you let the contract expire and then just let him walk in free agency, or do you try to get something for him? And I feel like sometimes with some of those bigger name players, if you're able to get something for them, or maybe, it makes it a little bit better when you're losing some of these guys who you've watched for a little bit now and you absolutely love seeing play. Um, so I absolutely agree. But I think that the real question with this here is that, is Jerry Jones willing to let go of Dak Prescott? And I know that there was those things that came out about, him saying that, they're all in. That, and of course things can change, but he was pretty adamant, in terms of the fact that, they think their roster is great. And maybe after with some minor tweaks, they can still go out and win a Super Bowl. And if that's the feeling, then is Dak Prescott going to get traded? Because if your plan is to go out and get a younger quarterback or develop Trey Lance as the Cowboys, that's going to set you back a little bit. As you know, it's very difficult for young guys to just assume that role and then go all the way. Can't happen. Obviously, it's not outside the realm of possibility. But I think you definitely lower your stock in that kind of end goal of winning that Super Bowl. So it's a tough toss up, but I do agree with you. I think this is a buckle winner take just because I think we've seen what Dak Prescott can do and the limitations of what Dak Prescott can do. And I know that kind of sucks to say out loud and kind of like to kind of fully accept that, but it may be time to move on. And if there is an offer, then there has to be some part of, the whole Cowboys regime to really think about this and be like, you know what, if we have an offer now, are we going to have an offer next year? Or are we going to have to like just figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I want to make it clear that the chances of Dak Prescott actually being traded are basically zero. It's
Yeah.
not going to happen. But I feel like it would be better for the team if it did than what they're considering right now, which is letting Dak Prescott play the year out and then trading
Yeah.
him. I know you mentioned Jerry Jones all-in comment. There was recently a segment on the Rich Eisen show where he was talking with Ian Rappaport, and they mentioned that some NFL insiders at the Combine claim that Jerry Jones all-in comment meant that they're going to focus on this year and just this year, and they're not going to hand out any extensions to any of their big name guys like Mike McCarthy, the head coach, or Dak Prescott, the quarterback, until they see what happens this year.
Yeah.
When Jerry Jones said all in, he wasn't saying like we're gonna just like sell the farm and
Yeah.
use our resources to go win this year. He was saying this year we're all in. This is a prove it year for not only the head coach but the quarterback and a lot of the other people we have on the team right now. So Mike McCarthy, his deal is expiring after this year. The
Yeah.
quarterback Prescott, his deal is expiring after this year. And it really seems like Jerry Jones is going to give them all one last chance together to go out, chase that ultimate goal of winning the Super Bowl. And if they can't do it this year, then it's over for all of them. The coach will be gone, the quarterback will be gone, and it's just going to be a complete and total rebuild for the Dallas Cowboys next year if we don't go farther in the playoffs than we did the past couple of years,
Yeah.
which is a terrifying prospect to think about. And it would certainly be nice to have some extra draft capital in our back pockets from a potential Dak Prescott trade for something like that. But like I said, based off of the contract and the cap and the no trade clause that Dak Prescott has, I think a trade would basically be impossible. Um, Obviously, nothing's totally ever impossible. And if I was the Cowboys, I would at least be trying to explore if it's something they could realistically do at some point, maybe with like cap and manipulation or something like that. Uh, but yeah, it's a really tough scene. I love Dak Prescott. He's my favorite player on the Cowboys by far because not only is he an amazing like MVP caliber quarterback, but he's a great leader and a great person. And you can just tell that, when you hear him talk or see all the charity events that he works for, does. Um, It'll be really sad to see him go if that's what ends up happening. And ultimately, I think that is what's going to happen. He's going to play out this year, and then he's going to be, a free agent, and he's going to go somewhere else. I'm really going to miss him if that happens, and it really stink not getting anything in return for him. But that's just the way the NFL works sometimes, sadly.
It's true. Yeah.
Speaking of trades, today, well, not today, yesterday, Jerry Jeudy got traded for a 5th and a 6th round pick from the Cleveland Browns from the Denver Broncos to the Cleveland Browns. So Carson, what I want to say to you is that the Broncos made a big mistake trading Jerry Jeudy for such little return.
Yeah, I think this is a bucked off take. I think that, what they got for Jerry Jeudy is going to help the Broncos in the future in terms of digging themselves out of the hole that they are in for this upcoming season and the next couple seasons in terms of money. And I think, honestly, the Browns knew this. And the Browns went into this knowing, okay, we're not going to be giving you so much stuff for your wide receiver because we know that we don't have to oversell it. That you're willing, because the Broncos, of course, with letting Russ go, they're pretty much kind of not showing their hand necessarily because anything still can happen, but it's highly likely that they're going to be drafting a young rookie quarterback. And of course, with that being the case, they're also going to start to look to rebuild because that's, as I was mentioning with the Vikings before, you got to look to the division and how is your clear-cut pathway to get to winning that ring. You have the Chiefs, you have the Chargers, and you have the Raiders. Now, the Chiefs and the Chargers are certainly the ones that are going to be who you're trying to compete with. The Raiders, I think, are going to also have another year where they're going to be searching for key pieces, maybe a rookie quarterback to help rebuild. But as the Broncos, you have some of these talented players like Jerry Jeudy at wide receiver who, moving forward, he may not be a guy that necessarily is going to make or break the room of wide receivers. And if you're rebuilding and you're looking for assets to gain, to rebuild, especially in a draft where there is a lot of top wide receiver prospects, especially when you hit some of the later rounds, of course, 5th and 6th, we'll see who's left over. But there's the ability to pick up some of these players that the Broncos direly need to fill some of these holes. Because as we've been talking with a lot of teams, some teams only have like one or two issues they need to focus on. Some teams have a whole plethora. And with that being the case, the Broncos are kind of in that position. And so I think Sean Payton is really looking at this not in terms of what do we do next year, as obviously as that is important, but what do we do in years to come? How can we challenge the Chiefs and the Chargers and of course the Raiders for the division? How can we carve our pathway to get to that Super Bowl? And I think that trading away some of these assets, such as Jerry Jeudy, is a step in the right direction for the Broncos to gather those key elements of draft picks to kind of help rebuild the team. I think that the Broncos they didn't make a mistake for trading him for so little. I honestly think that's all they could probably get for him because it's no surprise that the Broncos are in a hole. I think any team wanting to do business in terms of trades with the Broncos kind of know that, at this time they're kind of in this rebuild phase. They're letting some of their bigger name guys trading them away to get draft picks. Maybe you don't need to sell out. Maybe you don't need to, risk giving them a third or a fourth or maybe even a second. I don't know. And the Browns, I think, absolutely just walked away with a top wide receiver to help them, their offense, especially to help Deshaun Watson as they themselves are trying to recover from a deal where they haven't really profited from it yet. And so bringing Jerry Jeudy is obviously a win for the Cleveland Browns. But I think at the end of the day, the Broncos kind of had to cut their losses and just had to accept a fifth and a sixth because that might have been the best that they had on the table for them. And bringing in those draft picks, you never know. They could end up being stars. So I think bringing in those guys through the draft, whether that is a wide receiver, whether that's additional help with some of their other issues on the defense or offense side of the ball, maybe helping bring in some players for their potential franchise quarterback that they're going to be drafting this year. So yeah, I'll say that this is a bucked off take. I don't think the Broncos made a mistake for trading for so little. I think that they traded him for what they could get for him. So I don't think that they made a mistake.
Yeah, see, I completely disagree. I think they made a huge mistake trading him for how little they got in return. Maybe I'm still, a little upset about the whole Amari Cooper situation where the Cowboys traded him to the Browns for also just like a fifth round pick. And maybe, I'm just a little salty about that. But Jerry Jeudy, I love Jerry Jeudy. I was a huge fan of his coming out of college. He was the same draft class as CeeDee Lamb. He reminds me a lot of Amari Cooper, and I think that was kind of like his draft comparison as he was coming out of college because he is just one of the smoothest, cleanest route runners in the entire NFL. Not only that, but he has good natural athleticism. He's pretty fast. I think he's like a 4.4 guy, so not like the fastest dude in the league, but he definitely has good speed, and he with his route running abilities, especially, he can create a lot of separation. Not only that, but I feel like every time I watch the Broncos, he would always stand out to me more than any other player on that offense. And they haven't had great quarterback play, especially over the past, 5 years, since Jerry Jeudy has been in the league. But he is a special player. And I think if they had just given him a chance, he would have proven his worth this year, assuming the Broncos managed to get like a competent quarterback. I think he would have had probably the best year of his career, and then they probably would have ended up franchise tagging him and working out like a long-term deal with him down the road. A fifth round pick and a sixth round pick, more likely than not, that will turn into players who don't even end up making the team. Most of the time, fifth and sixth round picks, they get cut in training camp. So likely they traded Jerry Jeudy away for two players who will end up not being contributors at any point in their career. Now, obviously, there's always the chance that your fifth round pick could be like a Puka Nacua type guy, but that's like a really, really small possibility.
Yeah.
I think if they had kept Jerry Jeudy this year, they would have gotten more in return in with a compensatory pick for letting him walk in free agency than they would have with just this fifth and sixth round pick that they got in this trade. Because I think the highest a comp pick can be is a third round pick. I think they would have at least gotten a third or a fourth for him after his performance that is coming this year, which would have been more than they got in return for him. So I think it was a really, really bad trade for the Broncos. They're not going to likely get anything of worth in return for Jerry Jeudy, and he's absolutely worth a lot because I think he's a great player, a young, super talented wide receiver in his prime, and those are hard to come by. So
Yeah, I should probably say that I do also agree with you with Jerry Jeudy. I think he's a great wide receiver. He's still a young guy that has done so much already, but just hasn't had the ability to really show off all of those skills with kind of mediocre play. One thing I wanted to ask you though, Rob, about this is, not necessarily going super deep into this, but if you were the Broncos and you're sitting on the situation that you have right now in regards to money, in regards to Russ not working out, you spent all this money and time and effort, picks, players to get him in the building. He's now going to be gone. What if not trading Jerry Jeudy, or let's say maybe trading him from, well, let's take out the consideration that Jerry Jeudy got traded. Let's go back. Like, what would you do if you were kind of the Broncos? Like, would you like how do you fix that situation without letting go of Jerry Jeudy?
yeah, that's a really tough question because they really got themselves in quite a pickle, by giving up all that draft capital for Russell Wilson and then giving him all that cap space and a brand new contract.
Yeah.
Um, But the thing is, if you want to rebuild your team, what you need are young, really good players at the most important positions. And that's what Jerry Jeudy is. He's an amazing player. He's super young, super talented, and at one of the most important positions in the game right now, wide receiver. I don't think you make your team better by getting rid of those players, especially for draft picks that usually will amount to basically nothing.
Mhm.
Um, I think if you were going to try and make your team better by trading Jerry Jeudy, you would have needed to get more for him. And giving him away for basically nothing doesn't really make your team better. I think at that point you should have just kept him, saw what happened this offseason, and maybe looked into, extending his contract. Because, if he really didn't perform as well as he can, this year, maybe you would have gotten like a huge discount on an extension for him. And then once you did finally get like a capable quarterback under center, he would have, shown up and shown out, and you would have had this great young wide receiver under contract for really cheap. I think there's
Yeah.
other players on the team they could have, like, I would have probably traded Cortland Sutton instead of
Mm.
Jerry Jeudy. I don't think Sutton's anywhere near as talented as Jerry. If I was going to get rid of one of those two guys for salary cap reasons or whatever, it would have been Cortland Sutton, not Jerry Jeudy. Um, they do have like a relatively high first round pick this year. I think it's like number 12, right?
I think so.
Something like that,
11.
11, around that range.
Yeah.
One of the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks will still be there.
Hmm.
Um, so if you had kept Jerry Jeudy and even Cortland Sutton, and then you went and got one of those quarterbacks like Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, or JJ McCarthy, I think you would have had a good foundation to build around in the coming years as you finally move past that massive cap hit from Russell Wilson. No, you wouldn't have been competitive for a Super Bowl this year, but you would have had a good basis to stand on. And
Yeah.
I think, next year, 2 years from now, who knows? Maybe you could have added some more pieces around that quarterback, fixed up the defense a little bit, fixed up that offensive line a little bit. And all of a sudden, you have a competitive team that could go out and win the Super Bowl. Trading Jerry Jeudy, I think, sets them back even further. It puts them much further from their goal of, being competitive for a Super Bowl. And now they have to go out and find another number one wide receiver because Cortland Sutton, I don't think, is that guy. So they just created another hole on their roster while getting almost nothing of value in return because fifth and sixth round picks, like I said, usually don't even end up making the roster at the end of the day.
Hmm.
So trading away a guy like that for nothing just really did not sit right with me. And it reminded me of the Cowboys' idiotic trade of Amari Cooper a couple of years ago.
Gotcha.
So we've talked about wide receivers, but now I would like to talk about running backs,
All
Carson.
right.
We already kind of mentioned Saquon Barkley, and in the news segment, we talked about how there were 4 main free agent running backs this year: Barkley, Tony Pollard, Derrick Henry, and Josh Jacobs. Carson, I don't think any of those 4 running backs are going to end up back on the team that they originally started with.
Yeah, this is this is going to be a hard one for me to say, especially. But I think that this is a buckle winner take. I think this is absolutely within the realms of reason. Um, I definitely don't think Saquon Barkley is going to be returning to the Giants. I think for him, there's just nothing really there, as we kind of talked about, for him to kind of want to play there. And I don't think that the Giants are going to be giving him big bucks either. So with both of those, without Super Bowl, without money, I think that he's going to try to pursue that elsewhere. Josh Jacobs, I think, is in the same boat. Um, Tony Pollard, yeah, I think the Cowboys are going to be trying to bring in somebody else. But the hard one, I think, for me to swallow and to still even think about happening is Derrick Henry not coming back to the Titans and not forever retiring as a Titan. And no, I'm not talking about when his career's over, he signs like one day and then he officially retires a Titan. Great. I hope you do that. But, you know, I think that, it wasn't, I was really sad actually, because obviously there's those rumors going around. I was at the game when Derrick Henry did his farewell speech, which for any of you that know Derrick Henry, he is a man of little words. So for him to go out and do that really says something. And of course, I know when I was sitting there and I heard it and I watched it happen, it was one of those things where I was like, well, of course he'll be back. Of course he's going to come back like that. Like, I guess he's just saying goodbye for now. And then, they're going to re-sign him and everything's going to be, happily ever after. But the way that free agency has been going, the way that, even I've been able to reflect on this Titans team moving forward, and I'm sure that this is the case for the Giants, for the Raiders, and even for the Cowboys. You really have to start to assess the situation of how much money are we willing to pay these guys, and if it's not what they want, well, then you're gonna have to let them go, for the sake of building your team to potentially, in the end, ultimately compete for that Super Bowl, whether it's this year or years down the road. And of course, there is no question that these four guys, if they're on your roster, they already make it better. But if there is nothing else going for it, and there's so many other holes on the offense and defense side of the ball, you really have to ask yourself the question, is one player going to be able to fix all those problems? And the answer is no. The answer is no. And so a couple of days ago, I actually ended up waking up for work, and on my phone, I got a notification that Derrick Henry unlikely to return. And of course, when you open that all up and the whole report, it was like, there's still a possibility, but it's very unlikely. And that just, ruined my day. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough, letting some of these guys go, especially Derrick Henry for me, is he's been, a favorite player of mine. Um, Proudly wear his jersey whenever I can go. But realistically speaking and reasonably speaking, I don't think that any of these four guys are going to be returning to their rosters next year. I think they'll all be playing somewhere else.
Yeah, well, right now I'm actually leaning towards this being a bucked off take. And
Really?
the reason for that is only because Tony Pollard and the Cowboys seem to have some momentum towards getting a new deal.
Okay.
It seems like the Cowboys' plan at the running back position is to get a running back in free agency and then also draft one because they're losing their top two running backs this year, assuming Tony Pollard leaves. Uh, but what I've seen lately is that the Cowboys want to bring back Tony Pollard on a cheaper deal,
Mm,
maybe like 5 million a year. And for Tony Pollard, that would mean he doesn't have to leave Dallas, move to a new city, all that sort of stuff. And I don't think he's going to exactly get like a much better offer anywhere else because this past season he really wasn't anywhere near as good as he has been previous years because he was coming off that injury. Now, towards the end of this year, he looked like his old self. He was much better in the last half of the season than he was in the first half. But for a lot of NFL teams that are just going to look at the body of his work and be like, well, okay, he didn't look anything like he did in years past. Why would they offer him any sort of, larger deal at all? And the truth is, I
yeah.
don't think they will. So if you have, 6 or 7 teams all offering you $3, $4, $5 million, whatever it is, and one of them is the team that you've just spent the last, 4 years on, and you have like a house in the city and you know the city well, I feel like you're more likely than not to return to the team that you know. As for the other running backs, I completely agree. Saquon is definitely not going to return to the Giants. Derrick Henry is almost guaranteed not to return to the Titans. And I think I'd be shocked if Josh Jacobs returned to the Raiders, all because these teams know that in order to keep those running backs, they're going to have to spend, a significant amount of money. And honestly, in today's NFL, it's just not worth it to spend that amount of money on a running back. Honestly, I don't know where they think they're going to go to get that kind of money.
Yeah.
Because even teams like the Ravens or the Bears that we were talking about before for Saquon, they're not going to pay them the contracts that they want. So they're going to have to take a discount somewhere. I think for guys like Barkley and Henry and Jacobs, it's more about going to a winning culture right now than it is about necessarily getting a big payday, because I think they could probably get paid roughly the same even if they stayed where they were. Especially for Barkley. I think he wants to go somewhere where he can, win, as we talked about before. And Derrick Henry, obviously, he's in his 30s now, probably doesn't have too much time left as a, valuable NFL running back. So he wants to go somewhere where he can have an impact and contribute to a team winning. So I especially think those two will not return to their original teams. And Josh Jacobs, if he wants to be a winner, I don't think Las Vegas is the place to do it, at least not this season. So unless he just decides he wants to, stay with a team that he knows, which I don't think he will, I expect all three of those guys to find different homes tomorrow or over the next week or so.
Thank you for joining us on the Redzone Rodeo podcast.
If you like football and you like having fun, come on down and subscribe. Check out our channel for more videos like this one.
No ifs, ands, or bucks. This is the best place for your football news.